I am Francisco Dominguez. I am the lead interviewer.
I'm Sam Schultz. I'm the secondary interviewer.
And this is Alberto Uscanga, our interviewee. So, Mr. Uscanga.
Hey.
So, growing up, you lived on the south side. You lived on Mitchell Street.
Yes.
With your father, with just your sister and your two sisters and your mom. So, how was it like as the only male in your family growing up? Was it hard for you, like trying to live with your family as the only male?
Was it hard? Well, the first thing I think about are Father's Days. When you think about Father's Day, you think about getting something for Dad, like a tie or a wallet. I got gifts on Father's Days. You know, I think it helped deal with the emotions that ran when I would see friends that had fathers and I didn't. My mom didn't want me to go the way that most young men go, which is the wrong way, which is joining the wrong crowd. So she gave me a lot more attention, and that way it was easier to not have my dad in my life because my mom so badly wanted me to be successful so that I would not go the way that everybody else does.
Well, you said you grew up without your father, and your mom kind of made you feel better about it growing up. But did you have any male role models that you looked up to growing up?
Absolutely. I believe that having positive role models, in my case, male role models, is huge to being successful. And I believe my first role model was my kindergarten teacher, Mr. Mario, who, us as students, we adored him. We always came into class before he got there, and we would always hide under benches and stuff, and we'd go, and try and scare him every morning. But he was so kind, so funny, so nice to us, and we clung to him because of that. And he loved soccer, and that's what made me start to love soccer. I tell people that my first love was my mom, my second love was soccer, and it was because of Mr. Mario. I emulated what he liked, and I wanted to be that, so it was kind of one of my first major role models. And throughout life, I had amazing teachers in different schools throughout the Milwaukee public school system that, now that I look back on those lessons that they taught me, these were amazing role models, amazing men that one day I wanted to be like. And even here at Marquette High School where I went, my guidance counselor, Mr. Gillen, was instrumental in just teaching me so many things about life, about patience, about how to deal with my issues. And a lot of us, we called him our dad. While he wasn't our literal dad, me and some of my friends who were also alumni, we said that was our dad in so many ways, because he was there to give us rides home, there to make sure we had food in our stomachs. The things that a dad would do, he did, not just for me personally, but for so many other young men. And absolutely, having mentors, having role models in your life, as someone who may not have a father figure, is huge. And I think it was a big part of what made me who I am and why I love helping people.
At the young age that you were at, did you ever witness any of your friends who didn't have role models like that, who ended up getting mixed up in the wrong crowd maybe because of it?
Yeah, I definitely saw friends and classmates who had opportunities to do things that were different, and they decided to join the wrong crowd because they wanted what was popular at the time. They didn't want to take the chance to do something that would get them to a new place in life. And I really think that not having those role models, not having somebody show you the importance of, hey, you should take this chance, or you should go to this team, or you should volunteer for this. If you don't have that role model to show you the value in that, it's very easy to just follow the crowd. And unfortunately, following the crowd where I came from meant getting involved with people who said they cared about you, who would say, let me take you under my wing. Maybe somebody who's just a few years older than you. And they take advantage of you because they know you have nobody to guide you. And they say, I'll guide you. I'll be your big brother. I'll be like your dad.
So are there any role models that you still keep in touch with now?
Yeah, I still keep in touch with Mr. Gillen here, even though he retired recently from his role here at Marquette High. We still keep in touch when we go to events, for example, when classmates of mine get married, or we have big ceremonies here and there for things that we're celebrating. I still keep in touch with him in that way. My teachers from grade school, not as much anymore, but I run into people here and there in the things that I do now as a first responder, as a volunteer for different organizations. I run into them or I hear of them. So a lot of times while I may not see them, I see their influence.
You talked about how you spend a lot of time on the north side with your mom's friend,
Mm-hmm.
but you live on Mitchell Street. But you
Mhm.
pretty much you spent even amount of time on both Mitchell Street on the north side.
I would say.
How did the different environments change you, if they did at all?
How did they change me? Well, nowadays I love talking to people of all backgrounds, and it started there. It started as a child, and for me it was just part of my upbringing. There was no this is them and this is us. For me it was like, that's just one of my other neighborhoods, and I'm going to go back to this neighborhood, and then tomorrow I'm going to go to that neighborhood. But they were both like home to me. And I think it really had a huge effect on, now that I work around the entire city, I feel like this is my entire city. I don't feel like that's the north side and this is the south side and we each have our sides. For me, when I think about me being a first responder in this city, I care for the entire city. And it's because of how I grew up. Always being in some different part of the city.
Did you always feel like this, where you felt like both sides were kind of united in a sense in your mind? You never thought of them as like, north side, south side, something like that?
No, not at all. And again, it goes back to that upbringing. And I think children are innocent because they don't know any difference between them and us. To a child, it just is. And if you can expose a child like me to so many different things, you grew up with a more open mindset. And because of that, I've never had that thought of them and us. For me, it's always been us.
So going to your mom, she raised you and your sisters alone. Did you see anything in her that at times you just realized that you can't let her down?
The thought of letting her down, yeah, the idea of being the man of the house at such a young age, it's a lot for a 10, 11, 12-year-old to think about. I mean, what 10-year-old would even understand what that really means? But I go back to Father's Days and them saying, oh, it's okay if your dad's not here, you're the man of this house. I took on this responsibility. My mom would literally tell me from a very young age, you are the foundation of this family. And that was ingrained into my head, and I never forgot that. You're the foundation of this family. I don't think I really understood what that meant, but I thought about it often. And because of that, I didn't want to let her down. I wanted to be someone who this family could lean on one day. And I feel like I've done that. Going to schools like Marquette High, which was a huge opportunity for me when I was deciding where to go to high school, deciding to go to Marquette University, deciding to be a part of different programs and volunteer in different causes. Each one of those decisions, they kind of go back to those moments when my mom would say, you are the foundation of this family. And I would hope that they're proud of me because I wanted to be there for her and my sisters.
So you had told us that you went to 27th Street School, which is now known as James Grappy High School.
Mm-hmm.
And you told us that you ran for president.
Yeah.
The student council president. And one of the things that you wanted to do was, you wanted to unite people. Did you experience any acts of like segregation or racism like in your upbringing?
Well, when it came to running for that presidency, which I believe was in 6th grade, I did feel a sense of tension. You see, I, for the most part in grade school, went through bilingual education, which predominantly meant Spanish-speaking students of Hispanic or Latino backgrounds. And we pretty much had our own classes. We had our own gym time. We had our own areas that we played in, where we played soccer, sometimes football, sometimes basketball. And it became an issue when another group of students, predominantly English-speaking students, predominantly African-American students, wanted to play sometimes with the same equipment that we would have. And we would have clashes, culture clashes. And it was frustrating for me, because for me, I would go to the north side and play basketball with my two, I guess you can call them adopted brothers, my mom's friends' kids, and we were friends. We'd play baseball in the back alley. We would play cans, which is a classic game. We'd play that in the sidewalk in front of the house. We'd play basketball with milk crates nailed to light poles. That was part of my upbringing. And to see the opposite at school, it was frustrating. I also ran for president when I was in middle school, 7th and 8th grade. And I won the presidency in that different school. So 6th grade I was president, the first president of that school. 7th and 8th grade I ran for president of student council. And I remember my 7th grade year when I was running for president, there was a student who was also running for president. And that student was walking down the hall one day, and it was a pretty competitive race. And I said hi, because why not say hi? We know each other. And I remember her saying, "What's that? I can't understand you." And I said hi again, and I remember she said, "I can't understand you. Your accent is terrible." And that hurt. I remember that hurting. And I remember feeling at that moment that I had to get rid of my Spanish accent that I had. Because until the 7th grade, I very freely spoke English and Spanish all the time. I was raised learning both at the same time. And I remember being so hurt, but I also remember going home that same day and telling my mom, "Hey mom, for 8th grade, I'm going to sign up for all English classes. I'm leaving the bilingual program." And she said, "Why?" And I said, "Mom, to get ahead in this world, I cannot have an accent." And looking back on it, I'm disappointed in myself that I felt that way, but that is what I took from the world. It was an important lesson for me, now looking back on it, to not be ashamed of who you are. You can have an accent and still be successful. I think she was just being mean, because I beat her anyway in the presidency. But I'll never forget that lesson. And now, my job, it helps that I speak Spanish. I have to speak Spanish, because sometimes we have patients who don't know English. And when I come in the room, I'm kind of reminded of her saying, "What's that? I can't understand you." How insignificant that is now, because now the fact that I speak Spanish, people are like, "Oh, thank God he speaks Spanish." So, yeah.
So especially now, Latinos are kind of the basis, the target for many racist attacks. So back on the South Side, when you lived there as a child, was there a sense of unity amongst the Latinos, or was it more just divided even within the Latinos?
I remember growing up, there was, for some reason, this weird culture clash between Puerto Rican residents of Milwaukee and residents of Mexican descent. I don't feel it as much nowadays, but back then, it was always just, if you were Puerto Rican, you were not supposed to like Mexicans, and if you were Mexicans, you were not supposed to like Puerto Ricans. Don't know where it came from. I just knew that's the way it was. I don't know if it was gang related, I know that when there were big boxing matches, which there aren't as many nowadays, but these are big boxing matches like De La Hoya versus Camacho, you know, and it was pitting a Mexican versus a Puerto Rican. Who knows if that really spurred on a lot of conflict, but it seemed like any reason to argue or fight, there were reasons to argue and fight at school, in neighborhoods. But I guess for me, it always made me wonder why that is. Because again, I just wanted to just be a part of the city and just be friends with as many people as I could, because I was always exposed to different things. It's not the same really anymore. I don't know where, when, or how that disappeared, but I do remember that from a very young age. Yeah.
So did you find it hard trying to make friends with all different kinds of people, as not many people were as accepting of other races as you were?
No, I never found difficulty in just approaching somebody and really saying hi and really being careful about, you know, if I say something to offend somebody. I was always very cognizant of where I was. And I think it all goes back to not just growing up in different parts of the city, but being that person I had to be for my family. Them saying that you are a foundation, you're going to go on and do great things, and internalizing that I needed to be there to help, so that innately made me want to help people. And regardless of what they looked like or where they came from, that never meant anything to me. Literally, as a child, I'd walk into a room and I instantaneously gravitated to everybody, because you could tell in the way that I spoke to people that I just cared. So it was never really difficult for me to speak to anybody who was white, black, brown, rich, poor, whatever. I just loved talking to people, and I was always able to talk to anybody.
So talking about caring, you said that you experienced a lot of sort of activism in your childhood as well.
Mm-hmm.
Your babysitter, you said that she was part of like that 16th Street movement.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that movement, like how did you view this movement growing up for 16th Street?
View the movement growing up, I thought it was awesome. Because as a kid, it was just 16th Street. It's the street that me and my mom and my sisters walked up and down every day to go to the grocery store, to go to McDonald's, to get something to eat. And here was my babysitter, an amazing woman. Not only was she an amazing cook, but she was so caring. She was like a second mom to me. And to see her and people like her who hold down a household, who have kids, who have careers, say, we need to rename this area to somebody who deserves it. And I didn't really know much about what was eventually going to be called Cesar Chavez Avenue. I didn't know much about him, but in seeing them, it made me wonder, why? You know, who is this guy? And what is he about? And why is she this amazing person and people like her? Why are they getting, you know, people together and marching down the street and getting people to petition and sign things? What is it? And that's what made me ask my mom, Mom, who is that? And that's when I would find out about people like Cesar Chavez, like Benito Juarez, all these great influential people in not just Mexican history, but world history, who decided to stand up for everyday people, because people like her, people like my mom, people like myself, just everyday people who just want a fair shot. And that instilled this idea in me that everyday people can do great things. Everyday people can go door to door and ask people to sign this petition to name the street after this person who fought for people like me and you. And that was amazing to have that ingrained in me, and I think I live that every day.
So Cesar Chavez Drive, his view on immigration was made clear after the name of the street was changed, and he stated that he wanted immigration to be legal only, and he didn't openly support illegal immigration. Do you have any views on this, and do you have any insight as to how other people reacted to this when this was made clear?
Sure. Well, the first thought that comes to mind, and I remember this from a law class I took here at Marquette High, was we are a nation of laws. And laws, if you look at things like the Bible, are man's feeble attempt to make order in this world, so that we can live peacefully, or as peaceful as possible, and have rules if somebody is wronged to make it right through laws, right? But sometimes laws have to be reassessed, maybe because things change. And I think when you look at the context of what Cesar Chavez said, is opting for legal immigration versus illegal immigration, I ask, what makes it so that people have to illegally immigrate? How is the process not easy to do it legally? Are there extra steps that have to be involved? Is there money that has to be involved in order to do it legally? That the everyday person, not even just from Mexico, but maybe from around the world, has to really decide whether I'm going to have food to eat, or whether I'm going to pay for this process to immigrate to the United States. And for some people, that's a very real decision that they have to make. Maybe illegal immigration is easier because of that, because we have to realize why these people are coming to this country. And maybe in that sense, I do agree with Cesar Chavez, is the best option is legal immigration, to do it legally, but to do it in a way that makes it fair, that gives every person around the world a fair chance to get here, regardless of his or her background financially. We want to give everybody a fair chance. Is the system that we're using, that has been in place for a long time, is that fair? And going back to law, the whole reason of it is to make sense of this world and to do things justly and fairly.
So you feel that people who are in their given circumstances, sometimes they don't really have much of a choice whether or not to legally immigrate?
Well, you look at stories from people in Milwaukee. I've had countless patients who are from other countries who tell me about the things that they have had to live with. And myself, having grown up in this city, on the lower economic rungs of this city, small apartment, a mom who barely makes ends meet. But to people who are just coming here, they look like I've got it good. And when I hear stories of people barely able to eat once a day, people who have to work from 5 in the morning till 8, 9 at night from very early ages, I'm talking 6, 7-year-olds who have to work on a farm to help the family out. I didn't have to do that. These people did. So you look at a family who wants something different, something better for their children. I think, don't we all want something better for our children? I'm a father now. I would want something, the best life I can give to my daughter. And if there is a place just across the border, and I have a way to do it, human nature, at least in my opinion, would state that I've got to take my chances, because I want to give my child the best life I can. And you see a lot of that here in Milwaukee. And you see a lot of families who get here and they find the opportunity, whether it's in construction or whether it's in the restaurant business, whether it's in farming, and they're able to give their families a better life. And in the end, isn't that what we want? If we could do that legally, if we could find a way to make it fair, to give people more opportunities, I think it's a win for everybody. Yeah.
Were there any other major acts of activism that you witnessed?
I witnessed when Univision, which was a very popular Spanish channel that was public TV, I remember this. I remember when they were trying to move it to cable. And it was a huge uproar. I remember this because some of my favorite shows were on Univision as a kid, and most of us couldn't afford cable. You know, to ask a Spanish-speaking population to have to pay for cable when it's tough to maintain a household. Cable was a luxury, and to ask us to have to pay to watch one of the few shows that we could actually watch and enjoy, I thought was a huge injustice. But again, people like my babysitter, like my mom, and countless other everyday people decided to fight against it and say, no, this is not right. And I remember that. Again, the same feeling of everyday people standing up for what they believed was fair and what was just.
Various communities on the south side
Mhm.
nowadays, like you mentioned United Community Center, that
Mhm.
became an actual program
Mhm.
that even created a school, Luz Guadalupe,
Mhm.
and you mentioned mentorship, and I wanted to know, what did you think of that in Milwaukee?
Well, I remember UCC when Bruce Guadalupe School was in its infancy. It was really just like kindergarten through, I believe, 5th or 6th grade, maybe even 8th grade. And now they have a high school. I've seen them expand. Now there's even the new Acosta building that was just finished being built, or is almost being finished being built. To have seen organizations like UCC expand, I think is wonderful. I think it's wonderful because they do help people. But I think it's important to remember where these organizations started. The one thing that I've noticed is sometimes corporations and organizations can get so big that sometimes we can lose our spirit. We can lose why we started this, because we are so drowned in paperwork and applying for scholarships and grants and federal funding. And while I'm not saying that UCC in any way has lost its way, very much, even from a personal standpoint, success is great. And doing things like joining a fire department and moving up the ranks and receiving degrees and receiving awards and receiving all kinds of accolades is wonderful. Growth is wonderful. But always remembering why it was even started in the first place, where the history of UCC was. And organizations like that, for example, other huge Milwaukee institutions, La Causa is another huge one. Journey House was another huge one. All of these institutions, they're more than just a building, they are an institution. Huge driving forces in my life and in a lot of people like me, as they grow and as we grow, as I grow personally. It's always important to look back and remember why. Always remember what started it. And I definitely believe that UCC, Journey House, La Causa, and a lot of organizations alike do their best to continue remembering why they do this every day.
Here in Milwaukee,
Mhm.
is we have Voces de la Frontera. They do a march. I want to know, what is your view on Voces de la Frontera?
Well,
Are you involved in any way?
I was a part of, I believe it was the May Day March last year. I believe if it wasn't last year, it was the year before. Time has been flying by, so forgive me if I don't remember the exact date. But it was an amazing march. We had hundreds, probably even almost 1,000 people, all marching from the south side. I believe it was around 5th Street, where near their offices are, 5th and Washington, I believe it was. We met there, so many people, and we walked down 6th Street. We walked down the very street where I used to play soccer, where now it's become a development for the Harley Davidson and other things. You know, before it was Club Latino's home field. It meant a lot to me to march down that street for the cause of speaking up for people who just want a better life. who unfortunately have to go about it in a not so legal way. But standing up for yourself, no matter who you are, I believe is not illegal. To stand up for what you believe is right, to stand up for your family, to stand up for your community. And while I haven't worked as much with voces besides that one march, I do agree that sometimes, as unpopular as it may be, speaking up for the little man is very important. Because if nobody decides to speak up like Voces does so very well, those people can get pushed around and can feel like they're being left behind and taken advantage of. And who really wants that? Who wants to feel like every day, in spite of how hard they try and how hard they work and how many sacrifices they make, they still can't get ahead in life? And it's my belief that organizations like that are just trying to give a voice. Literally, the name of the organization, Voces de la Frontera, voices from the border. These are people who have the same kind of desires that people here have. I want my family to be well maintained. I want to be safe. I want to feel appreciated for the work that I do. And that was an awesome event to be a part of. I was very proud to have walked down 6th Street and walked all the way to the Milwaukee County Courthouse and see the city and see so many people of so many different backgrounds all chanting in unison was very powerful for me. Yeah.
Do you believe that Milwaukee has actually listened to organizations such as Voces de la Frontera? A couple of years ago, Milwaukee did pass the Milwaukee ID, which is valid at some places here in Milwaukee.
Well, I believe recent actions of city government that I have been paying attention to have made it known that they are supportive of legislation that would protect people in this city who, again, just want to take care of their family, who for whatever reason have been deemed illegal, and who just find ways to take care of their family and who just want to continue to do that. I feel like Milwaukee has done a decent job of defending those rights of those humans, not just Milwaukee residents, but they're humans at the end of the day. But it can be a touchy subject, and as a first responder, sometimes it's hard because my job is to help people, medically and with emergencies, and sometimes stay away from the politics of it. But again, I'm born and raised here in Milwaukee, and before I'm a first responder, I'm a resident of this city. I am the son himself of somebody who migrated to this country. The son himself of somebody who just tried to make ends meet for her 3 children. And I believe that there are young professionals, young politicians in this city who, in the future, I look forward to seeing them do more. I look more to people like yourselves, young high schoolers who have all the potential in the world to get involved in politics and causes and run for those positions, run for alderman, run for mayor, run for governor. We are seeing so many strides in this state and this city of young people who are getting involved every day in marches and causes and even running for office. It's amazing to see. And while I said that Milwaukee is doing an okay job, I look forward to Milwaukee doing more as we get more of us in positions of power.
So do you believe that moments of activism like this, do they unite communities? Like where you said that Puerto Ricans, they weren't really with the Mexicans. Do you believe that movements like these united them?
Yes, I absolutely do. Because I vaguely remember seeing marches like this as a young boy, and just seeing people that were both Mexican and Puerto Rican. And now that I've gotten older and have been to newer issues now as an adult, I see more of everybody. And I think it's amazing how a common issue, which I think just speaks to the human condition. There are things that we can all relate to, whether we are Puerto Rican, Mexican, rich or poor. Things like equal housing, things like feeding our children, things like health issues and the health of our children or the health of our elderly. These are things that I believe we can all get around. And I've seen at events and causes people of all different backgrounds come together for a cause. And I remember seeing that in situations like that, like Cesar Chavez, like Univision, nowadays like marches speaking about police brutality and where this city is going with this treatment of its residents.
So going into high school, you came here in Marquette for high school.
Yes.
And the school being predominantly white,
Mhm.
and you being a Latino, it must have been a little bit odd at times. You must have not felt comfortable, and also being a lower economic status, it obviously plays big into coming to a school that is predominantly white people.
It was difficult. It was an adjustment, but it also was a challenge that I eventually accepted how much it would benefit me. My freshman year, I went through a lot of anxiety about now going from having been the big fish in the little pond feeling. I was the star of the 8th grade class, a 4.0 student, can do no wrong, had the whole world ahead of me, and I could do great things. If I wanted to be president, I was probably going to be president of the United States one day, and that's the mindset that I had. And then you juxtapose that against freshman year here, and within the first semester, the grades weren't the same. I felt like when I looked around, I didn't see anybody that looked like me besides the people I saw at lunch that I clung to with my dear life. But I had to learn that you're not always going to be top dog. You're not always going to be the smartest. Not always going to be the tallest, clearly. Not always going to be the fastest or strongest, but I have to try my best. And people admire that about me. So I went through my time here at Marquette High with a sense of just having an open mind and just trying. And now accepting that, well, maybe I am not going to be the smartest every time, but I've got a story to share. And when I would share a piece of who I was, a piece of where I grew up, what the food at my home was like, those students who were not like me, who didn't look like me, who came from these privileged backgrounds, they would listen and they would admire that. And to this day, some of those that I still keep in touch with really appreciated hearing those sides that maybe they weren't used to. And I appreciated hearing some of the stories that they had, because in the end I found out that no matter what socioeconomic status they had, no matter what color their skin was, a lot of them had problems at home too. Just because someone looks a certain way or they get picked up in a certain kind of car, it doesn't mean that everything is great. I learned those things in things like retreats and things like playing sports. We got to bond and we got to see that there's a lot more that we share in common than we do uncommonly.
So you mentioned sports.
Yeah.
You played soccer.
Yeah.
You said it was your second love, other than your mom. It was your first love.
Yeah.
You said you played for a team called Club Latino.
Yeah.
So how did the game of soccer, how did it kind of change how you are as a person as you played?
Well, it was a labor of love. I wasn't always the tallest person. I remember in grade school, we'd line up for recess, right? And we'd be at the fence, and the older kids would pick people. I said, okay, you, my team, you go on my team. And I'd always be the last one to get picked. And most of the time they would say, no chiquitín, which means little guy. No chiquitín, not today, you know. But I would go home and I would be sad because I just wanted to play. I loved soccer. I just wanted to play. And I remember walking home, and one day I was so sad. My mom says, what's wrong? And I said, they don't let me play. And she would say, don't worry, you'll try again tomorrow. And every day I would keep trying. I would keep trying. I would keep trying. I'd line up every day, and every day they would say, no. I'd probably go find a soccer ball if I could and play with all the other kids that didn't get picked. You know. Until the one day they picked me. You know, it was the happiest day of my life. I didn't really do much, but I'll never forget that. I'll never forget getting a chance. And then I started playing with teams. I played with the United Community Center. We had a team, and I kind of joined there by accident. I got a chance. They needed a player, and I was the only person there. I said, I'll join the team. That led to me joining Journey House, which was another community organization on the south side of Milwaukee that was influential in my life. And a lot of the players from UCC moved over to Journey House when our coach, Patricia Goldman, she moved over there to start those teams. And we stuck together. We were pretty much the same unit, the same goalie, the same me. I was a defender. I loved being on defense. And I tried to get better and better and better. And I got good enough to the point where when I came around to Club Latino, I was a high schooler playing in an adult league. And it was awesome to have seen going from that little kid who lined up on a fence every day, never getting picked, to being in high school and playing with 19 to 24-year-old men and doing well. I was a force to reckon with. Wasn't always the tallest, but if you came near the goal, me as a defender, you best believe you were going to meet me. Yeah. Oh.
And your team performed well?
Yeah, we did very well. The great thing about playing in those club leagues is we drove around the area. We didn't just play in Milwaukee. And actually, the Harley-Davidson Museum, where it is now, where we used to practice, where we used to play, where we used to host our home games, our field used to be there. It used to be the 6th Street Viaduct. It was an old green rusty viaduct. I remember playing right next to that factory that was next door to what's now the Harley-Davidson Museum. And when all that stuff was getting torn down, I remember being just a teenager, driving to the bridge, going around the little viaduct, the little ramp, and just parking there and going to play soccer. And when all that stuff started getting torn down, I felt like a piece of my childhood, a piece of who I was getting lost. It's great that the Harley-Davidson's there. I know it's a huge part of the history of Milwaukee, but I'll never forget just being 14, 15, 16 years old and playing under that bridge.
You then went into MU. You went to the university, you went to Milwaukee University.
Yes.
You lived on campus for a while, and then you moved to a loft, and then you kind of moved back home after your daughter was born.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
was this difficult? Was this difficult for you? Like, did this alter any of your future plans?
Well, I would say heading into Marquette University, I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I had been groomed for college. Being here at Marquette High School, it's a pre-college high school. The goal is to get to college or get you in the mindset to go. At the same time, I was part of Marquette University Upward Bound, which is a pre-college program geared towards first generation, low-income, ethnic minority students. Anybody who falls in that category, they also groom you for college. So throughout high school, from two sides, I was being told, college, to the point where I had to go to college. And I got into Marquette. I got into their Educational Opportunity Program, which is another program under the umbrella of the TRIO umbrella. And it was awesome to be there. But again, I had no idea what I wanted to do until a teacher from Nigeria, he was my theology teacher, he said, what do you like? What do you want to do? And I said, I love helping people. I love medicine. I like science. I've always loved science. Why don't you be a doctor? And I said, oh, yeah, you're right, I should be a doctor. And the goal at that point, the freshman year, once I found out the path I possibly wanted to take, was to go to medical school. And I was taking practice MCATs as early as sophomore year in college, taking all the prerequisites I needed for medical school, doing the volunteering I needed to do, being really involved. But when life happened, and by life I mean family needed help, at least in my mind, I needed to be there for my family, as the man of the house, as the foundation, right? I had to work. I had to be there to support them. I had to. And while people were telling me, stay in school, it's gonna be better for you in the long run, it's gonna be better for them in the long run, you could not tell me that sticking it out for another year or two was gonna be better than letting my family suffer, because I needed to finish this. I needed to be there. So it was very difficult for me to have this dream of possibly becoming a doctor or leaving to help my family out. Those were very conflicting ideas. It wasn't easy for me to continue with school when I had real problems happening at home just across the bridge. So it was hard to decide at the time that college was not right for me. But it did, in a weird way, push me to where I am right now as a first responder. Because my whole life I've been putting out fires, maybe not physical ones, but family ones, financial ones, community fires. So the idea of putting out actual fires and doing it in a city that I love, from the south side to the north side to the east side to the west side, I love this city. It just made sense. So when I thought about what I want to do, I said, why don't I go out and put actual fires? The weird thing is, to become a firefighter in this city, you have to have a medical background as an EMT. So the powers that be somehow found a way to make that circle close and said, well, you didn't get to the doctor part, but you're going to work with the doctor as a paramedic. And now my job is to work under the license of a doctor as a paramedic, responding to the area's most critical calls and helping out the city in that way. So it's weird how I lost one dream, I thought that was done and over with. But now on a daily basis, I do the very same thing that I was being groomed to do in college. And who knows, maybe a doctor one day, but for now, being a first responder in the city of Milwaukee, pretty close.
Right now, you're currently working as a paramedic and a firefighter, or a first responder, if you want to be more general. But you talked about how you lived, or how you worked at the Marquette Jesuit residence.
Yeah.
And how you worked there for 4 years as a kitchen aide. And you loved working there. So how did you come about getting this as one of your first jobs?
Oh, well, one of my first jobs, how I got it, was through one of the mentors I talked about earlier, Mr. Gillen, my high school advisor. I think he noticed that, I was having issues helping out at home, or even just issues just with the basic things that I needed as I was heading into college. Making some extra money to maybe pay for books, or having some extra money on hand just to have extra money on hand. So I think it was senior year, he told me about this opportunity that he knew about to work in a kitchen at Marquette. And I said, sure, I'll look into it, I'm interested. And I went. I remember being told about what the responsibilities were, and I said, sure, I'm game. Let's do it. So it was nice to have a job at Marquette University. I think it was even technically before I was accepted into the university. So then I got accepted, and I maintained the job throughout my time at Marquette University. And it was an amazing job. The job was working in a kitchen where we served food to the ministry of Marquette University. So I'm talking the president of the university, Father Wild, a lot of the theology professors, and a lot of higher ups at Marquette University. I met them every day for dinner and made sure that they had everything they needed. I would get to talk to them about my classes, and I was even able to get my mom a job there. Things were great. It was one of the best jobs I had, not just because of the food, but because of the connections that I made there.
So you had a lot of jobs. You told us before, you had a wide variety of them. And like you said, now you're a first responder. So how did any of these many jobs that you have kind of help form your opinion of what you wanted to be, which ended up being a first responder? Did they start changing and shifting your opinion toward, I want to help people?
Well, in any of the jobs that I've had, they've all involved helping people. And while they may not have all been physically demanding jobs, like you would think firefighting would be, the essence of what I do every day now as a first responder was only increased by working those jobs. Knowing what problems people had and knowing how to fix those problems or knowing where to find those solutions are things that I did in all the jobs that I had. And working with people of all kinds of backgrounds at these jobs only groomed me for what I do now. Because as a first responder, I go into every day never knowing what I'm going to see, never knowing who I'm going to meet. And when I respond to a scene, I can't say, no, I'm going to help you. Yes, I'm going to help you. I can't do that based on who you are. My job is to help you, regardless of who you are or what your beliefs are. And I'm really thankful for my experiences with all those other jobs, because I learned a lot about how to talk to different people, how to listen to other people's ideas, and how to come together for a common purpose. It really did wonders for me in grooming me for the life of a first responder.
Could you recall a few of these more minor jobs that you had?
Sure. Well, some big names, Starbucks. Starbucks was huge. And probably in a weird way, Starbucks helped me a lot to get ready to become a first responder. I mean, at Starbucks, you meet so many people. And I was at one of the busiest Starbucks in the city, if not the state. The Starbucks on 16th in Wisconsin, Marquette University Starbucks, wasn't owned by Marquette University. We just called it the Marquette Starbucks. But there, I met a wonderful staff, and I was hired by the store manager, who herself is amazing, Amanda Trenbeth. She was monumental in just molding me into an awesome partner. We called our staff their partners, and she even started her own business in Bayview called Sushi Go. So it was awesome to see her grow, because she herself had aspirations to do things in the community. But I loved that job because I had coffee, I had people, and I could talk about coffee to all types of people. I loved talking to people who never had an espresso cappuccino and telling them what this was. Or to somebody who, oh, I want to try something blended. Let me show you what a Frappuccino is, and let me show you what I can do to it. And coffee was really just the medium that I used to find out about them, to find out about what they did for work or what their dreams and aspirations were. Coffee was just a way to get to that. For me, coffee or working at Starbucks was more than just coffee. It was about a connection to the community. If I saw someone who was having a hard time financially, but I know that they buy drinks every now and then, I say, hey, you know what? This one's on me. Have a drink. Here's a pastry on me. You know, I can tell something's going on. Here you go. And with that, I made so many connections. I would even have to, at some point, run to Starbucks. Can you imagine not having a car, riding your bicycle, but in February there's too much snow on the ground, so you can't ride your bike, and you are the opening supervisor that has to be there by 4:30, and the Milwaukee buses do not run? What's your only option? Run. So I would literally pack a bag, because at the time I also worked for Manpower, another Milwaukee-based company. I worked in their call center, where my job was to answer calls for all 50 states and Puerto Rico in Spanish for customers who had pay issues with their pay, and I had to figure out what the problem was. So while I worked at Starbucks in the morning, I had to pack a bag with my dress clothes for Manpower, and I had to bundle up, and I would run across the 16th Street Bridge, just under 2 miles, 4:30 in the morning, -20, -30, -10 degrees, because I had to be at work. And every time I would run to work, I would think about this dream of being a firefighter. And I would tell myself, this running, all this training I'm doing now is getting me ready for that. And I would do it every morning. And then I would leave Starbucks and I would run downtown, down Wisconsin Avenue to Manpower. Thank God they had showers there. I would get there and I would get the shower before I had to go to the call center. And my job at that point at Manpower was to answer phones and listen to problems and find out how I could get people their money if I found out that the pay system was not working. I had to be adept at knowing how to look at a system, figure out what the problem was. And these are people who had real problems. They expected that money to be there on a Friday so they could have gas money for the weekend or have grocery money for the weekend. And I had to help them. A lot of times they were mad, but I had to, again, just like at Starbucks, find the common connection, find the problem, and find a way I could help them.
So you obviously learned a lot about communication, which is crucial in your job as a first responder. Are there any sort of memorable stories that you had with certain patients during your time as a first responder?
Yeah, I can think of one right now, actually, that I think about it. So there was a day that we got a call somewhat late at night. It was almost midnight. I'll never forget this call. We got called to just like a shelter, like a halfway home, for someone who had foot pain. Now, most people would think it's your everyday run-of-the-mill, I stubbed my toe, I want to go get it checked out. May not seem like a emergent call. So we get there, and it was my partner's turn to take the call. To type up the report, to do all the patient care. It was my turn to drive to the hospital. But when we get there, I found out that he spoke Spanish. And he felt more comfortable talking to me. So I looked at my partner and I said, I got this one. You owe me one though. I took the call. And as we're in the back of the ambulance and we're getting our assessment, we start to find out that this was more than just toe pain. We find out that he had psychological issues going on. And he had just been released from the hospital because he tried to take his life just a few days before. And the reason he had toe pain was because he was a diabetic who had necrosis going on in his big foot, big toe, something that was related to his diabetic condition. And as a result, he kind of pulled at his toenail to the point where it was starting to get infected. It doesn't sound like the best things. So we came in for toe pain, but what we got out of it, when we got the information, was this is a person who tried to take his life just a few days ago, has an underlying condition, and he just wants help. I think he wanted more than just help for his toe. I think he wanted help here. So I decided to treat him with some medication, pain medication, and I remember calling the hospital and telling them what I had done. And they said, oh, so you gave pain medication for toe pain? And I said, yeah, I did. And at that point, I decided I had to defend this patient, because as a paramedic, really what we do is we're advocates for our patients. You advocate what your patient needs because you're the first person that meets them. You're the first person that finds out what the problem is. And you're the person that's going to hand off this patient to a nurse and a doctor team who are then going to be in charge of making this person better. And if I don't get the story out how it should be, patients tend to slip through the cracks. So I decided at that moment to stand up for him, because on the way to the hospital, I found out his story. I found out that he didn't have a car. I found out that he had psychological issues that prevented him from getting jobs, but he found one place that was able to get him a job somewhere on the east side of Milwaukee. And he was happy being a cook there, but he always dealt with these psychological issues that he just wanted to get rid of. And I think that's why that happened, and that's why we came to help him. And when I was done handing him off, I remember the nurses saying, "Is this your friend or something?" And I said, "No, he's my patient." And I took the time to listen to him. I took the time to find out what's going on beyond just the toe pain. I treated the toe pain, but I think I also treated him. And the weird thing about why I remember him was a couple days later, on the anniversary of the death of a very close friend of mine, we were going to a call for somebody who was in hospice care, meaning that this patient was receiving care towards the end of his life. So I had a lot of thoughts going on in my head. I was remembering my friend who had passed away. And here I am going to a call where we're treating somebody who has already accepted that they're going to pass away soon. And as I get my cart out, the cot out, and I start moving it towards the door, a stranger walks in front of the street. And guess who it was? It was that guy, the patient I had just cared for a couple of days before. And he looked at me and I looked at him. And I said, "Hey." And he had the biggest smile on his face. You can call that a coincidence if you want. But all those things that were going on just made sense as to why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because for me, it's more than just a job. It's being there for people. And all the jobs that I've had have done nothing but training for this. All the life that I've lived, the person I've had to be for my family, the person I've had to be in grade school running for president, all of that was training for that very moment.
You went to Lakeshore Technical College. Did this help you prepare for your future career?
Yeah. Lakeshore Technical College was far away, I'll say that much. If you ever heard of Manitowoc County, Lakeshore Technical College is in Kiel, Cleveland, Wisconsin. Lakeshore Technical College is about an hour and a half away from Milwaukee. So it was quite a drive every day to go there. And going there, a bit of a culture shock, somewhat. I had never heard of fish boils and brat fries, but I guess those are big things over there. And it was awesome to go to a educational institution that was far away enough where I felt like I was far from the city, but it also had a lot of similar problems that we encounter in the city. Patients who may not be able to afford medical care, who just want to have their health issues looked at. And people who were trying to better themselves by going to a community college because it was financially more feasible than going to a bigger university. People just trying to make sense out of life. People working hard, blue-collar people that just want better for their friends and family. And I was honored to know that I came from that here in Milwaukee, and I see people like that up at Lakeshore Technical College. It was an awesome experience, and I'm very glad that I went to that college to get my paramedic degree.
Going back to sort of a bit of the you at MU, in your freshman year, you were in an article, and you said essentially that you want to change the world by offering help to those that are in your situation. So how were you able to share your story, which is very relatable to many, especially Latinos who often are in the same situation? Like, how many times were you able to share the story, and how did you share the story?
Well, that article, actually, I think you can still find in ways like that, in ways like being interviewed for articles for schools, universities are one way that I do that. The wonderful thing about having attended colleges like Marquette University, Lakeshore Technical College, Milwaukee Area Technical College, is they have provided avenues for a lot of students like myself And when they look at my story, it's a very compelling story. Like you said, it's a very relatable story. I believe not just for Latinos, but for anybody who's just looking to find something positive. A lot of those colleges and institutions have looked at my story and have asked to interview me, to place me in articles like that. I have also been a part of the Donate Life Wisconsin campaign, which has been a huge platform for myself to talk about loss of close ones and how being an organ donor can help, in particular, Latino community and communities like the Latino community, help provide solutions for people who are in need of life-saving tissues and organs. Just being who I am, being involved in what I do as a first responder, as an alumni of these great institutions like Marquette MATC and Lakeshore Technical College, even Marquette High School, I've been able to reconnect with people there and highlight how those institutions and organizations have helped me become the person I am. And for me, it's always a sense of giving back, of being a man for others, which is something that was ingrained in me here at Marquette High School. And I give back in a way where they take my story and they put it on billboards. I have radio ads on the radio. I have little short videos on websites for different organizations. And they highlight the story that I have because I believe it's really relatable, and I think they do too. So most colleges, universities have me marketed in some way or form. You'll probably see it out there if you look closer.
So you talked about volunteering with some organizations. What are some of these organizations that you volunteer with that you believe are truly helpful?
First one that comes to mind is the Wisconsin Donor Network. So that right now is one of the biggest organizations that I work with. And what I do for them is we have a specific section of that named CODAR, which is basically church outreach in diverse communities, looking at resources. And we go out into predominantly Latino or African American communities, and we engage churches, schools, businesses. And the conversation that we have with them is talking open and honestly about organ and tissue donation, about stepping up to the plate and saying, and I want to put this on my license that if something were to happen to me, I would consider donating my organs or tissues as gifts to help someone who is in need. Because now as a first responder, as a paramedic, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't meet a mom, a grandma, a dad, grandfather, uncle, cousin, somebody who is experiencing end-stage organ failure. And these are people who have so many lessons to teach us. These are people who can teach us about how to run a home, how to buy a home, teach us about mistakes that maybe they have made, they don't want us to make. And they're literally dying because of things like diabetes, things like high blood pressure, things like high cholesterol. And some of them are deciding to change their life, and it's almost like too little too late. Now they need a liver, now they need a kidney. So my goal in volunteering with CODAR and the Wisconsin Donor Network is to raise the awareness within our communities to say, hey, we have the ability by one simple action to put our donor sticker on that card so that if something were to happen to me, I can help. And it's huge work that they do, and I'm honored to be one of the faces that they have chosen to push that cause forward and get more people to at least consider it.
So now you live in Cudahy.
Yes.
You no longer live in here in Milwaukee, per se. So how do you miss it? Like, do you miss Milwaukee at all?
Well, the nice thing about having moved to Cudahy is it's close to Milwaukee. The strange thing about the south side of Milwaukee is you throw a stone, you're probably either in St. Francis, Cudahy, or Oak Creek. I like that I can still, hop into my truck, and within 10 minutes, I'm back at Mom's house. But it is a bit quieter than my neighborhood that I grew up in, where my mom still lives. I like that I can run to the lake. And I guess in Milwaukee, living close to the lake, at least in my mind, means paying a little more money. I'm not necessarily paying as much living in Cudahy and having a quiet neighborhood. It's a bit of an adjustment because it's a lot quieter than Milwaukee. There isn't access to like a downtown that's as big as Milwaukee's by comparison. But for me, Cudahy just means seeing something different. My heart is always in Milwaukee, and I still, on an almost daily basis, go to my mom's neighborhood on Mitchell Street, and I still visit her, talk to the neighbors, and see how things are going. So it's almost like I'm still there. But living in Cudahy, for me, I look at it as an opportunity to see what a different neighborhood is like, and potentially when they move back to Milwaukee, when I feel like I'm ready to buy my first home. I still believe in coming back and making a difference and working and living in the city that I grew up in.
So you focus less on the moving out of Milwaukee, focus more on the moving into Cudahy, looking toward the good side of Cudahy rather than thinking in the way of I'm leaving Milwaukee because I don't want to be there. It's more just because you want to see new things.
Exactly. I love seeing new things. I love being a new member of a community. And even right away, having moved into Cudahy within the first month, I was already attending community sessions where we were talking about Latino health issues in the city of Cudahy. And I took a lot of the experience that I've had in Milwaukee, and especially now as a first responder, to kind of talk about the issues that I have already noticed in the city of Cudahy. So already I'm taking those experiences from Milwaukee to share in Cudahy, and who knows if one day I'll be back in Milwaukee.
So many Latinos, especially on the south side of Milwaukee,
Mhm.
they don't have necessarily the easiest way to go down a good path. So many of them follow bad paths. But as one of the lucky few who were able to succeed, how do you feel that we as a community should improve the chances for future Latino generations?
Well, I believe that mentorship is a huge part of it. Earlier in this interview, I talked about even from kindergarten, having men who I aspired to be like, who I said, I want to be just like him when I grow up. And it's important for men my age to reach out. It doesn't mean you have to give all your time, but even an afternoon here and there, going to talk to a group of students, volunteering when you can for soccer teams, football teams, going to read to students. These are all things that I personally have done. And I do those because they were done to me. And to show a young child what can be is important. The reason that being a first responder in this city is so important, because you never know if a kid is going to be on scene and they're going to see the first responder hop out of that fire engine or hop out of that ambulance, and they're going to see somebody that looks like them. And when that kid is crying or screaming because they're scared about what's going on, for somebody who looks like them to approach them and say, hey, it's going to be okay. You never know if that one moment will inspire that child to say to him or herself, I can do that too. I had a lot of that in my life growing up, and I was very fortunate to have that. I believe we need more of that. And sometimes people feel the pressure that, oh, if I sign up to volunteer, I'm going to have to be there every day. For me, it was those few moments, the 5 minutes here, the 10 minutes there, that made a world of difference. And I think that would do wonders for the next generation to have mentors or volunteers, just spend some time with them. It would do a lot, just to show them the way.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Uscanga.
Yeah.